Let's take a deep breath in, hold, and exhale. Welcome to a pleasure-lit episode about breath play today. I am the multi-award winning pleasure and toy queen, an educator, creator, reviewer, mentor, and guide to help you live a pleasure-lit life. Today, I have got a beautiful guest speaker with me, Vicky Devika, and she is an embodied goddess, consciousness researcher, and founder of the Ethical Breath Play Institute. So she's dedicated to unlocking the potential of somatic and energetic transformation. So once celebrated as the breastplay queen, another queen, in the fetish world, Vicky shares now her wisdom into guiding others on their journey of embodied mastery. So she transforms dance floors into sacred spaces, integrates music, movement, and breathwork for deep connections and self-discovery for a more conscious and embodied life. And before we're going to get into this episode, I would love if you can follow and subscribe to the channel and also screenshot the podcast, share it, tag me and the guest speaker in it with your takeaway message of this episode. Welcome to our podcast, Vicky.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. It's such a pleasure to be a part of this episode about pleasure.
Thank you. Before we're going to get into this episode, I usually ask a couple starter questions to the guest speaker so we can get to know you.
Yes.
Where are you currently at on your pleasure journey? And what is something that brings you a lot of pleasure?
Yeah, it's a constant evolution, right? For me, it has been a constant evolution, this constant pursuit of embodiment, really. And that's really where I get most of my pleasure these days, is when I find myself fully aligned with my spiritual self and the whole of myself. So a very holistic approach to pleasure. I had this pursuit of pleasure in so many different ways, different iterations, different parts of at different points in my life, different parts of my life. And I found that a common theme was that this thing of pleasure would be very elusive. It would be this thing that you chase it and you get a little bit of it and it's like a drug and you just want more. And eventually I got into this place where I started finding actual fulfillment. So when you get pleasure, you're in it, you enjoy it, and when it doesn't leave you just wanting more, like a drug, like kind of feeling empty afterwards. So that's where I'm at in my journey, and it's been quite the road to get to this point.
I love that. It's so true. It's like we actually already have pleasure within us. It's actually a part of us. We embody it. We just need to unlock it and then embrace it. And constantly, it's like going to the gym, something that we just need to continue to do to keep us embodying it.
Yeah, it's very much like getting a great analogy I find is getting the juices flowing. You know, we
Yeah.
see it. We say it like on a more physical perspective. You know, get the juices in the body, but it is this metaphor for the spiritual, where it's like you're getting this juice, this circuitry with the universe, with a
Yeah.
higher power, however you want to call it, something greater than us that is a source of unlimited, unbound pleasure, and we can tap into that at any point.
Yes. And what is something that brings you the most pleasure?
Well, in this where I'm at currently in my path is really going to dance, connecting with people, going to like big events, and being very present and embodied in my sexual self on the dance floor is very much like where I'm at now. And this is me reconnecting with older parts of myself and more I guess younger parts of myself that are coming back to the surface after having spent several years in the adult industry, and seeking pleasure in more, I guess, traditional, like downright like fetish sexual kind of ways, and now kind of having segued back into that more spiritual connection type of thing.
Yeah, I love that. For anyone listening, so can you explain breath play for listeners who might not be familiar
Yes.
of like what it actually is?
Well, breath play is the use of breath control, or I define it as essentially using either breath control, breath modulation of the breath, really to enhance pleasure. So that's really like at its nutshell. A simple breath hold can be a form of breath play. But the way that it is often described and marketed and seen in the content business is when you have someone controlling someone else's breath, or whether through props, things like bags and masks and things like that, that will prevent the player or the receiver will prevent them from having control over their breath. So essentially surrendering the control over your breathing patterns to someone that you trust. So it is a very deep and profound exchange of power, and there's a tremendous amount of trust, and that is required in order for that to be enjoyed. It's an activity that requires a lot of trust and letting go and presence.
I have recently seen something on social media, and was a moment when you popped into my mind, and I thought I need to get you onto the podcast because the education is. We just need more education around it out
Yes.
there. And it was a post on social media about choking, but then when they talked about it, they actually talked about breath play, and I thought this is not the same. So can you
Yes.
just explain on the difference between breath play to choking to breath work, like just to
Yes.
take the
Thank you. This
differences?
is this is a great question. It is a commonly it's commonly shared misconception. People call choking practices breath play. We see it in porn and stuff like that. Oh, breath play, and this person getting choked. So I always insist when I teach about breath play, when I talk about breath play, that breath play is not choking. Choking is not breath play. Whenever you're choking someone, and this is not, there's nothing against the practice. It is not something that I personally have a lot of experience with. I do not have experience with choking. I do not engage in those practices, and it's really not my thing. I respect people who choose to engage in those practices. It's really not a judgment call on those practices. But whenever you are applying, a blood choke or any kind of choking technique, you're not actually restricting the breath. What you are actually doing is restricting, if it's done correctly, you're restricting the blood flow to the brain, and that has an immediate impact on consciousness and a whole host of other pretty instant impacts on the body. And responses, which for some people it enhances their pleasure and all that good stuff. That said, as I mentioned, I do not have any personal experience with that. It's not something I gravitate towards. And I always, it used to really rile me up that people would confuse the two things, the two practices, which choking is its own thing. It has to do with controlling the blood flow to the brain. It has nothing to do at all with the breath. When you think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, it feels like you can't breathe and you're choking, but the mechanism of action in the body is completely different. It's completely different. A simple breath hold. We all do that as kids. In the pool, it's like we all go underwater for. Who can hold their breath underwater for the longest? Haven't we all done that? Yeah, and then having this breath hold contest in the pool, and it's all cool. And it's very innocent, childlike play. It's very different from what we see in porn, which is like this violent, like choking thing. They're miles apart. So it does. Yeah, it used to really rile me up. It was a big pet peeve of mine when people would call uh, breath play, choking, when they would call that breath play. We even have instructors that not to name any names, we have someone going around the community giving these breath play workshops that are all about choking and hanging and all that stuff, which is I find very gory, and it's not at all what it is that I teach and what it is that I practice. So um, and a great way to think about breath play is to it's like breath work, but with a fun twist. That's really what it is. It's modulating the breath. It's surrender. It's a somatic practice. It's something that allows you to work on different aspects of the body and bodily responses in a way that is hopefully ethical. And that's what I teach, is ethical breath play, which to make a distinction from just breath play, I'm taking it a little further, and I've introduced this concept of ethical breath play. So when you have breath play that is done with intention, that is done safely within with a cohesive framework, then you get to that thing which I call ethical breath play, which is done with the safety and the pleasure of all parties involved, and consent and all this good stuff. So it's taking a practice that is inherently tricky and could be dangerous. And I'm not saying that choking is absolutely dangerous and breath play is safe. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying, first of all, these are two completely different practices, and we should not confuse them. Both can be dangerous. Both, and I would argue that choking is a lot more dangerous, and strangely enough, often more commonly accepted, more permissively. You see it more often in the porn movies and things like that. And in the community, it's like, oh, choking is just like this little fun you do in the bedroom. It has very dangerous physiological responses, which are not quite the same with breath play. So breath play can be a little bit more permissive. That is not to say that it's not an intrinsically dangerous activity if it's practiced alone. So that's the one thing that with breath play, if anyone watching this today, if there is only one thing you remember from this entire interview, this entire rambling of mine, if there's only one thing you're going to remember, is that you should never play alone when it comes to breath play. The only way you could do it safely is if you actually hold your breath, just sitting down somewhere and you're actually just holding your breath. That's the only way you can do it safely. Anything else that introduces a bag or any kind of restriction or anything like that, and I won't get into the reasons why and the whole, we could talk about this for hours, really. But point being, it's not something that you should be doing alone. It's not something that it is intrinsically dangerous and risky as an activity. And this is the same, like the best analogy I can think of is like scuba diving. Who would go scuba diving alone? No, you don't do that. It's like an activity that is extremely dangerous if you're not trained. If you're doing that alone, if you're doing that with poor equipment, if you don't know what you're doing and you're like, oh, I'm a scuba diver, and you're not trained for that, and you go alone, you're risking your life. Now, if you go and take a course and you are diving with an instructor or with a buddy who also has the training, and you're doing that with good equipment, it becomes an activity that is extremely safe, that you can get insured for. So the analogy is very much there when it comes to breath. I think the closest thing is comparing it with scuba diving.
Even breath work, when I did my breath work facilitator training, the simple practices is fine. You can teach them, they can do them. But if you go into really transformative, longer sessions, you should not be doing them by yourself. You have a facilitator who looks after you, because there's so many different sensations and things, physical changes happening in your body, that you do need someone who's going to be right there with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. It's absolutely true. Even more so when it comes to breathwork, when we can really get lost in the moment. It's very possible to get lost in the flow and the feelings and all the good stuff that happens during a scene. And therefore, that just adds to the potential for something to go wrong. It also adds to the potential for something to go really, really well if you know what you're doing, and if you're playing with someone who is trained and skilled in facilitating, then it opens up a whole host of possibilities and good things.
Very true. And back to the play compared to breath work. I recently went with my kids to our summer holiday, and we played that for I don't know how long, but it was, Mom, count me, how long can I be underwater? And then I had competitions going, and I had like multiple kids, count me too. And then I was like counting all these kids, and I'm like, I'm doing breath play here.
Well, it is, and it's a thing that all kids, I say, maybe not all kids, but it's pretty universal. It's a universal human experience of being near the water and seeing like, well, how long can we hold our breath? And doing that from just a playful, fun, innocent activity. Now, it is a gateway to transformation. It is a gateway to exploration. And you do have actual breath holding competitions, free diving competitions, and
Yeah.
underwater breath holding competitions. So all of that is it's not coming from just Pornhub, right? So there's a little bit more to
So
it than that.
while we're at that, why would someone want to get into breath play? Now looking at the benefits or the changes for the sub or the dom even or the
Well, I mean,
facilitator.
there are many different, I guess, paths that lead to it.
Mm.
My own personal experience has introduced me to really hardcore fetishes. So people who grew up often with unexplainable and very powerful, deeply ingrained fetishes that and desires, and bordering on like obsessive compulsive desires for suffocation, for extreme breath play, for passing out during and all that tied with sexual excitement and sexual desire, which obviously in many cases can be an extreme source of shame and guilt, and all the stigma that comes with it. And then the questions of like, well, why do I feel this way about it? So it's a pretty common one. It's just so taboo. It's so, you know,
Mm.
it's so shameful that it's extremely taboo. So for me, because when I was doing content online, and I was creating all these videos, I was doing a lot of like more extreme side of breath play, a little bit more on the extreme sides, like so pretty intense scenes and things like that. And so therefore the audience that I would draw was comprised mostly of a lot of people who had these hardcore, debilitating, obsessive compulsive fetishes. So that's one aspect of it, that is often, I guess, the flagship. That's kind of what you see or what you think about when you think breath play. And there's something to the aesthetic that kind of reinforces that. So when you put like a bag, or you see like in the movies when they suffocate someone with a plastic sheet, and it's like just looks so dramatic. So the whole aesthetic kind of reinforces that more extreme side of things. That said, there is also the possibility of wanting to get into it, just to as a form of exploration,
Mm.
just like for the same reason as somebody would want to get into breath work or yoga or any kind of somatic practice, which is a way to explore the liminal, to explore the in between, to explore sensations and what
Yes.
happens between two breaths. When I used to do these workshops and talk about breath play, and I would open the workshop with such like a dramatic thing, saying like everything happens between two breaths. It's the first thing you do when you are born, and it's the last thing you do when you leave this world. The first thing you do is breathe in, and
Breathe
the
in,
last thing you do when you leave this world is
exhale.
breathe out. So everything happens between two breaths. Ooh, and it's kind of
Very
like super kind of mystical, kind of like.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
the
love that.
reality is, the reality is that everything happens between two breaths. Like your entire life is contained between an inhale and an exhale.
Exhale.
Um, so this is like on the macro level, and then when you go into a very powerful, deep, intentful, transformative scene, then everything happens between two breaths as well. So there's this space that happens in between two breaths. People who do a lot of meditation, a lot of deep spiritual work, understand that there's a tremendous power
Mm.
in this liminal zone in between. So that would be one reason why you'd want to explore that. Then there's a second reason, obviously, which is the same reason as breath work. The connection between the unconscious and the conscious mind is the breath. It is something that you normally do not think about doing. You're breathing on a daily basis. You go about your life. You're working. You're driving your car. You're doing whatever thing you're doing. You're not thinking about breathing. It's something that your body, via the autonomous nervous system, it does it automatically. Like your heart rate, like your digestion, like all these other bodily functions, like breathing, happens automatically. However, if you at any given point you can shift into taking control over that breathing, which you can most people can't normally do with the heartbeat or with your digestion or that these other processes which are remain automatic. That is one of those unconscious processes that you can take over, that you can override what's happening on the unconscious mind and then shift that process into the conscious mind. So this is really a gateway. This is a physiological process that you can shift between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind.
Yeah.
And so in that same manner, you can also use that mechanism to access both the conscious and the unconscious, which is why breath work and all the healing and somatic modalities are so powerful and so transformative, right? That's the main reason. It's one of the reasons. And so now you have all of that, and you couple it with sexual stimulation or playful inquiry or erotic kind of embodiment work, and then you have a powerhouse here of possibility for
Wow.
transformation, for catharsis.
I mean, everyone who's new to breast play, you just probably sold them on trying
Yes,
that out.
exactly.
And when you are ready to unlock and widen your pleasure potential, then I highly suggest you join the Pleasure and Toy School, which is also your go-to if you would like to make an income while experiencing pleasure to become a successful pleasure toypreneur. And if you would like to see more of me, your favorite one-of-a-kind pleasure toy queen, I highly suggest you join one of my adult fans pages, Pleasure Toy Queen. For more details on how to join it all, go to pleasuretoyqueen.com. I'll see you there.
And that's my idea, is to that's the mission here, is to take this whole narrative of breath play as being this extreme practice, which I've described before, and the kind of audience that this work attracts, the hardcore fetishists and people who are very much drawn to it from a place of, we don't know
Yeah,
why, but a place of deep compulsion and dark, and turn it into a soft, playful, somatic, fun, exciting modality, which is very close to breath work. But we say,
with
oh,
the, yeah,
it's work, 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 but where's the play? So
I love that because it's like something like I've also done my yoga trainer, for example. And I'm an advocate for like self pleasure. This is a part of my self pleasure exploration with toys. And now I, for example, combined blindfold and sensual touch with yoga flow. So making it a yoga flow, sensual yoga flow practice. So breath work, but also that fetish of breath play. You can combine that as well, of making it, like you said, softer, a somatic practice, but also bringing that little bit of erotism in there and just really, making it more playful, making it more an exploration, making it more a journey. So I really like that combination of things, and it makes so much sense for me right now.
it does, and it's nothing new to a certain extent to combine the breath
Yeah.
with the erotic. I mean, this has already been done. If you've studied any kind of tantra, any
Yeah.
kind of sexual yoga, at the core you have the breathing, the control, the pranayama, and then the erotic pranayama, which is like the control of the breath, and then using the breath to direct the flow of sexual energy, which allows you to create a powerful vessel for embodiment and all that stuff, and all that good stuff that you do when you train for sacred sex and tantra. So now it's that same idea, but with a partner, and the conscious exchange of, I give you permission to control my breath, is a very powerful declaration of trust and
Yeah.
surrender. For instance, it's a very powerful exercise in surrender, in exploring power exchange. So anybody who's drawn into the idea of power exchanges and control dynamics and all that kind of stuff, there's also a whole wealth of possibilities there in just exploring you can control my breath for a minute, hold my breath for a minute, even if I need to breathe, and you let me you control that. That's a tremendous act of surrender. That's a
Yeah.
tremendous, it doesn't get any more immediate than the breath. When you look at the hierarchy of needs, and the most pressing thing you need is air. You need it all the time. You know, you can go for a couple hours without water. You can go for a couple of days without food. You could go technically for a while without shelter. There's plenty of things that we can go without in terms of, you know, the body's needs. But oxygen, air, a couple minutes at best. You know, I mean, five 5 minutes is a long time without breathing. I can assure you of that. 10 minutes is practically unheard of. You know, say for some champions. So there's this immediate need for it that you can actually surrender. And so what you're saying when you're doing that is like, my life is in your hands. Now it's all very
Yeah.
theatrical, it's very extreme, but it's also very powerful. And there's a huge subset of people. That's the reason why they're drawn into it. So it's not always necessarily the darker, more compulsive desire for, you know, suffering and all that stuff. Sometimes it is just the idea of giving, surrendering, giving your power away, and that, and for submissives and you know, people who are looking for that kind of dynamic, that kind of power exchange, it that's probably like the most effective, most immediate, and the most powerful kind of surrender that you can offer.
So basically, because I've been also to a Tantra festival after I've completed my Tantra practitioner, and that actually means the alternate breathing when I did it with a partner. So I was only allowed to breathe in or exhale when he was doing the opposite.
That's
And
breath
so
play.
that's breath play.
Of
And,
course
and
it
even
is.
and even meditation, when I look at it, the box breathing, when I put on a breathing practice on my app and want to concentrate, or I taught my kids about the box breathing, and they're like, okay,
Yeah,
now hold for 4 seconds. And you can really see how they are like, okay, I need to count 1, 2, 3, 4. This is surrendering to someone, saying to them what they
oh
need to do.
yeah,
So if they listen to
yeah.
the app, they're basically surrendering. This is kind of like a power control as well.
Absolutely. I had a friend of mine I used to play with. There was this master in techniques and stuff like that. He had built a software on a laptop that would actually control your air, an air pump and all that, with a very elaborate mask. And so the machine would control how long you would have, and there was this whole sequence of, you know, you can hold your breath for this long and that long. And so it is very similar to what you're describing, you know, the box
Yeah.
breathing or any kind of breathing sequence, or any kind of guided meditation that tells you when you can breathe, when you can't breathe, that kind of stuff. All these are obviously various forms of breath play.
When
Absolutely.
you've mentioned already a couple tools, because I'm an advocate for exploration with toys and tools, and now we've talked about like the lighter kind of breast plays. So now the little bit more intense are probably the ones where you're going to include tools and toys where you can't just get
Yeah.
out quite easily, where you're going to need someone. Can you explain what kind of tools and toys are available
Yeah.
for that?
So you have different modalities. I like to classify them as the first type is the membranes. So a membrane is anything you place on the face to prevent the breathing. So it could be a plastic membrane. Oftentimes people will use a rubber membrane. So it's like a rubber sheet or a latex sheet. You know, I use these elaborate names like a membrane, but it's just a sheet. But there's different types. So you have plastic membrane, a latex sheet. It could be even just a regular type of sheet, which will still allow you to breathe a little bit, but very restricted. So that's one type. Then you have bags. So what are the plastic bags? More often than not, they are plastic bags. That's a big favorite. It's a whole, so aesthetic around that. It's one of my own personal favorites as well, is the plastic bag. There's something about bagging that I absolutely, definitely enjoy a lot. So that's one of them. Then you have vacuum bondage stuff. So whether it's like through a vac bed, through the cube, or anything really, that's usually they're made of latex rubber. Once again, that's that same idea where you get vacuum sealed in. I've done a few scenes as well of being vacuum sealed within plastic bags. So you know, these like big shrink storage bags that you can put like clothes and things like that. It's like a
Yeah.
big like a big Ziploc, essentially, that you can vacuum the air out of that. So I've done some scenes where I was in the big Ziploc bag, you know, being vacuumed in there. So that's another type of vacuum bondage. This is interesting because what you get is you get both the breath restriction and the bondage aspect of it all at once. So that's a very neat
And you can
approach.
probably also play with the fetishes if it's latex or
Well,
plastic
exactly.
or
That
whatever.
there's a huge overlap
Overlap,
between
yeah.
plastic, latex. People who are very much into latex full enclosure usually always gravitate towards breath play. It's like it is the huge overlap.
Yeah.
It's like in the big love map. If you were to draw this thing, it's like it's just so like adjacent. It's so close that it's like I don't know. It's so related. Same with plastic. Plastic fetishists often have a thing for breath play. Whether oftentimes it starts with shower curtains for some reason. For most people, like most people, are like,
Okay.
oh, I mean, like shower curtains. Like
Oh,
because you can put a shower curtain over your face, and it's like as a kid, the plastic
yeah,
smell,
it
the
always
all
stuck
the
on
yada
me.
yada, yeah,
Like,
often ties in with the water stuff because it was in the tub too, so plastic underwater. There's
yeah.
a whole big mash, big mash of pool of fetishes around that as well. Then you have the masks, so various types of masks. Gas masks are a big one. Often also very connected with the whole rubber, heavy rubber, full enclosure type of, for the aesthetic, because you see it, with the models and with like the whole gas mask with the latex thing. So there's a huge overlap there. But there's also the breath play component to it. So using the gas masks to restrict the breath, to control the breath, using what is called a rebreather bag. So the rebreather bag is like a rubber bag that was traditionally used in anesthesia in hospitals. And so you can hook that to a gas mask and create interesting effects with that. Um, what else? Well, you have breast play hoods and masks that are designed specifically for that. So a whole host of different things and balloons. That's another one, which is almost like a membrane, almost like a bag, but also like a hood because it's something you can put over your head. So it's like out of a crossover. In all these cases, they can be made of plastic, they can be made of latex. So there is definitely this overlap between the sensation, the material, the fetish for the material itself, and then the feeling that it produces on the face, on as you try to breathe in and out, and then you can't, and the restriction, and then you can couple that with bondage, which in the case of having a mask that you can't take off and your hands are tied, and then your partner controls the outcome. So that can be very well, both very enticing and quite extreme. And as you start adding all these different components together, so the bondage, the texture, the sensory deprivation, and then you add the breath control, there you're just adding more sensory input or deprivation. However, and different people process it differently too. So for some people, it enhances presence. It's for other people, it creates dissociation. So that's another whole other level of understanding of like the response that this creates in different people. We're all different.
Hmm. What are some key safety guidelines and considerations when we talk about breast play?
Never play alone.
Yeah.
Simple as that. That's the, as I said earlier. If there is one caveat, one thing, because I said a lot of things today. If there's one thing you remember, just one thing, don't play alone and seek out a professional. So someone who is trained, who knows what they're talking about, who will not tell you, "Oh yeah, I love breath play," and then they're talking about
Start
choking. You
choking.
can clearly that's not a professional. Clearly, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. So seek out a professional, somebody who is trained in the practice, which is the reason why I created the Ethical Breathplay Institute to train professionals, because there's so much in terms of misinformation, misconception, and just so much BS out there that I wanted to clear the clear the air a little bit and actually offer some proper education around the topic.
Can you explain a little bit more about your Breast Play Institute, or also what kind of like resources you can recommend for anyone wanting to get into breast play?
Yes. So, well, we are in the process of launching the first cohort. So, I'm actually going to be training level 1 professionals and facilitators. So, they're sex workers, DOMs, anyone, a coach, somatic practitioner, anyone within the industry who wants to learn about this practice, who wants to offer these breath play modalities to their clients and to be client facing. That's the training that that you should take if that's something that talks to you and you are driven to use breath play with your clients. Then you could get the training, the level 1 training, and become an accredited breath play practitioner. We're also going to be offering very, very soon a workshop for just about anyone, for just average players, or anybody really who's curious, interested in breath play, to essentially explain some of the stuff that today is just like a very broad overview. And so we're putting together a full-on one-day workshop where we're going to cover everything from the physiology of what happens in the body to all the different modalities and all these things. It doesn't mean that you can just go take that workshop and then go play on your own. That's not that. If anything, once again, the workshop will definitely underline how important it is to be with a trusted partner. If you're not with a practitioner and you're with a trusted partner who also knows what they're doing, and you both know what you're doing, it's like scuba diving. It's cool. That's great. But you can't do that alone. I mean, you can if you want to risk your life, and you absolutely should not risk your life, because you are definitely worth it. And just getting a quick fix, it's not worth it. But that's my own take on it.
Thank you for explaining that. And I love that you are going to provide as well a workshop, so you can actually really cover everybody who's interested in breath play. So I so love that. I also love that you have been able to get it accredited, because I think the education is just missing out there. And I love your work that you are providing safe education around this. Oh, amazing.
Well, that's the idea. Is what I did not mention is that the course, for the provider course, will actually lead to a membership into the International Association of Breathplay Practitioners. So the idea is that just like breath work, just like any other somatic modalities, is we need a framework, we need something in order to be able to have accredited practitioners and people who are, that we know, okay, these people are skilled and they've got the training. So we're going to have a directory of different practitioners in order to be able to direct the clients who would like to experiment with that. If you want to go see a DOM, you want to go see someone to have a breath play session with someone, then you're going to be able to find somebody in your area and go book a session with someone who you're going to be taken care of properly, safely, and ethically. Because that's the idea. It's ethical.
We could use that for almost anything in BDSM, like femdom, and
it's a matter of organizing it, right? I mean, at one point or another, someone has to take the lead and be like, okay, well, here's the curriculum, here's the expertise. For me, it comes from the fact that I no longer very much practice as a I don't offer sessions, and I do not practice breath play very much on my own either, like with a partner or anything. It's not something that I do a whole host of, and so I've kind of moved away from this scene, and I left that behind, and I'm like, it didn't sit well with me. I'm like, I have to leave something else, like a legacy of some sort, like a training. And I had mistresses and people come to me and be, you want to give me some training, and I would like to take a course with you. And it didn't make sense for me to just go and give out the training like that on a one-off, on a just basis like that, without proper structure. So for the longest time I held back, and I wasn't quite ready. And then it came together. It's like, yeah, okay, this is the path. This is how we make it make sense, is by having an association with an accreditation and full-on training that actually leads to proper education and then, and who knows what, eventually lobbying to have this practice recognized.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think we need something similar for pleasure toys and tools as well. It's not regulated, and I'm putting out the education about safe material, how to clean it, because there's still Amazon sellers or sellers who are just writing it's silicone, but what you actually get is a mixture of something that's not silicone. And
Ooh. And so
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
there's something there I didn't even know.
yeah. They call it
I
then
just got myself a
sil-
new toy. I'm like, maybe I should look into that a little bit.
yeah,
So
yeah. They call it then silica or silkin. Like they have like type. You think, oh, it's just a typo maybe, but it's just their way of saying it's a silicon mixture with TPE or TPR or PVC, which is
and so what does it do? It's actually harmful to the body,
well,
or
it's non it's porous, so you can't clean
oh,
it properly. So TPR, TPE, PVC, compared to like silicon, borosilicate glass, or stainless steel, which you can clean, you can sterilize if it's not electric.
great.
Um, but the others you can't. So after a while, after a few times of use, even though you can't see it, it will harbor your fluids in there. And over
Mm,
time, you should maybe replace it, or otherwise you're going to get
yeah.
infections or you pass something
Okay.
on. Yeah. So
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's a
that's
quite
why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I see people playing with toys and I'm just like, oh, like, how old is that? 6 years. What?
yeah.
Yeah, so
I hear you. And at one point, there is this. I had to go through this period or this kind of process of letting go of wanting. You can't fix. You can't. It's this thing where people go around calling choking. Calling it breath play, and
yeah,
as I said, it used to round me up a lot. It used to really trigger me, and be like I wanted to save people, wanted to educate people, and there comes a point where it's like, I'm showing up the best of my ability to do uh, what I'm called for to do to provide the information, and beyond that, relinquishing control, because like you can't go and fix the whole world and change people's mind, and having there's
very
a
true.
limit to how much we can actually take responsibility for other people's lack of education.
Yeah, very true. I had to pick my battles too, because even when I just speak openly about my education, someone might feel like I'm talking to them and they feel triggered and then they reach out with nasty comments, and I'm just here
Oh
to
yes, that
educate,
too, that too. There's
empower and
nothing quite,
inspire.
yeah. There's nothing quite like trying to speak into a vessel that is not receptive, or as we say, if you're trying to reach the wrong person or they're not receptive, it's better not to say anything.
Yeah,
I had to learn that the hard way. I've done a lot of I've experienced a lot of ways of I've experimented with a lot of ways of how not to do certain things,
yeah.
so that's enabled me to discover how to do them right.
And then this way we can focus the energy towards the people who actually are open it and want that education and want to explore
Exactly.
and experience more. So
Exactly. Otherwise, it's energy that's wasted, and then it creates more negativity. The person who's just closed off to begin with, the vessel that is not receptive, that cannot receive the information. It's like trying to pour water into this bottle without removing the cap. If it's
yeah,
capped, then you try to pour it in there, you're just going to create a mess. It's a wasted
very
energy. It's
true.
wasted water. So make sure that before you pour into someone your knowledge, make sure that they're receptive. In other words, that the cap is off.
Very good point. Love that one. Where can people find you if they want to sign up to your Breath Play
Yes.
Institute or find out more about you and what you do?
Yes, so there's the Ethical Breathplay Institute on social media. So it's like on Instagram, it's on Facebook. So Ethical Breathplay, um, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and then I will give you the link to the website where you can actually sign up for the wait list for the workshop. Or if you're a professional, then you can certainly book a call with me so we can talk about your goals and your desires and what you would like to achieve. Hopefully, to have you as a student in the next cohort, because we need leaders, we need people like you to actually show up and help spread this knowledge and this awareness. So that's one way. And then there are my own personal social media. So Vicky Devika on Instagram and Facebook as well, and X, and yeah, that's kind of it. It's kind of non-fat life, but yeah. So all Vicky
Think,
Devika, pretty easy to find.
highly
It's only one.
suggest you all check it out. I've got a couple like last questions I always like to ask.
Yes.
Do you have like a favorite pleasure product? It could be anything that brings you pleasure.
Mm. Oh my gosh,
Could
a
be fetish
favorite.
wear, could be toy, could be cream, could be like anything.
That's a really good question. I mean, these days I'm all into embodiment. So for me, the pleasure is in the moment. I used to get a lot of pleasure from dressing up in full enclosure latex. So latex is definitely a go-to. It's something I still do quite a bit of. Not as much. But anything that's like lingerie, that's like fetish wear. I
Mm,
like to put together all these cute outfits and, like kind of rave style and mix and match different outfits. So for me, I guess, you know what? I'm way better answer to that. Scratch that. My favorite toy, mirror.
yeah.
Why did I think that? That would have been just so easy. Think, oh, blah, blah, blah. A mirror. I still get off with myself. You have no idea.
Oh, I love that so much, so much. I
Yeah,
love to include a mirror, and
yeah,
I've got them everywhere here now, and I've got lined mirrors
yeah.
on the wall now in my bedroom. So, and
Yeah,
just
there's so much you can do with it. Like, and also on the spiritual side of things, like you can energy play. You can do a whole host of magic tricks and magic spells and embodiment things and casting stuff and
exactly,
make love to yourself and other things or the,
exactly.
and a
Flirt
whole
with
host of
yourself, turn
other
yourself on.
and a whole host of other unspeakable things that cannot be talked about, but you can
Yeah,
find out when you practice.
love that. Never thought about the mirror as well, but yeah, great one.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely my number one. It has
yeah,
been for quite some time, but more so than ever now. So yeah.
cool. Do you have a book recommendation, like a favorite book?
Yes, it's Demons of the Flesh.
Demons of the Flesh. Never heard
It's
about
not
that.
really available easily. I think it's like $1,000 if you want to get a printed copy. It's a very rare book, but you can find a PDF. You can find a PDF somewhere. So it's called Demons of the Flesh. I don't remember the author. I mean, there's only one, so you can't really go Demons of the Flesh. It highlights the history of the left hand path and
Ah,
the sacred feminine and history and all of that. It's extremely enlightening, extremely powerful. It's not too heady, and it talks about a whole host of exciting topics. So that's one of my.
oh.
It's not directly pleasure
No,
related,
it
but
can be
but it
anything.
is. But it is. Trust me, when you get to the end of the book, you get it. And
Yeah.
then the pleasure comes in. And like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Last question, which we usually leave the audience with. What would be your number one tip or one of the tips that you can give the audience about pleasure?
Learn to receive. Learn to receive. Don't take it. Don't chase it. Don't chase it. Receive it. Learn to receive. Clear the channel to receive. To receive. Because what we often do is to go and pursue it actively, like try and take it.
Hmm.
But I mean, that can work up to a point. But the way to lasting fulfillment is to clear the channels. And by channels, I mean, on the energetic level inside here and, a whole different levels to clear the channel so we can actually receive the
Yes.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for your invitation.
Thank you so much for tuning into this pleasure lit episode. Please do me a favor and follow and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And also share them along so we can spread more pleasure into this world. And if you've not given this podcast a rating or review yet, please do so now. Thank you so much for your support. Until the next episode, with love and pleasure. Mwah.